Hello Legacy students, Mersh here. So today we're going to talk about two-dimensional arrays. This is a kind of an interesting topic in the regards that it lets us remind ourselves how to use arrays, one-dimensional arrays, and it also just is an expansion topic for us this time, during this year. So, what are two-dimensional arrays? That's probably the question you're asking. Well, all they are arrays that are considered to be now one-dimensional arrays. Now we're looking at data that naturally does normally come in a table. So like we're talking like an Excel spreadsheet or something along those lines. These need to be what's known as a two-dimensional array. So I got some examples. Like let's consider maybe movie ratings by multiple reviewers. Each row would be a different reviewer, and then each column is a different movie that each reviewer has done. Or something as simple as a grade book when I'm looking at it. Each row is a new student, each column is a specific test. So all a two-dimensional array is it's indexed by two subscripts, one for the row and one for the column. So it goes row by column. Those of you that have taken an enriched Algebra 2 or you've looked at matrices before, matrices are basically a good way to think about for when you're doing your two-dimensional arrays. Now, ultimately, what is a two-dimensional array? A two-dimensional array is basically an array of arrays. Now, let me explain that again. So ultimately what you're doing is you have an array here that has so many spots in it, and inside of those spots you are adding an array inside of that spot for each of them. Now in this particular class we are only going to look at what's known as a square array, so arrays that have everything. You could, however, if you continue into your career as computer scientists, you theoretically can match an array in which is called a ragged array, in which like one row can have 5 things and one row can have 3 things, but we're not going to look at that in this particular class. So when I am calling an index, I'm calling a subscript. So rating 0, 0, 2 would be the row and the column of that particular two-dimensional array. In this case, it is a 2. Now remember, rows are your horizontal ones, columns are your vertical ones. Okay, columns stand up and down on a house. That's how you can remember that. So in this case, row 0, column 2, row 0, column 2 would give me a value of 2. So that could be reviewer's number 0, the movie of number 2, he would have given a 2 for a rating. Now, reviewer number 1 for the third movie gave an 8 in that particular movie. So keeping in mind that our subscripts, we need a row and a column for that. Now, similarity with 1D arrays. Each element in the 2D array must be the same type. You can have primitives, so that's like ints, doubles, stuff of that nature. And you also can have objects. So I could add, let's say I make a student class, or I can make a two-dimensional array of the dessert items that we made in our dessert shop classes. Subscripted variables can be used just like a variable, so I can say rating 0, 3 is 10. That would allow me to assign into row 0, column 3, the number of 10. And also your indices can be a variable, so I could make j be a counter if that helps me. So rating 3j is equal to j. So I would, in row 3, column j, whatever the value of j is at this time, would be assigned to the value of j. Now, how do you declare two-dimensional arrays? Well, honestly, it looks exactly like a 1D array, but just a little different. So, when I'm creating a two-dimensional array, you're going to have the type of stuff you're placing into it, int, double, student, dessert item, whatever you want to put there. 2 separate brackets, that's to show that you're wanting a 2D array, because remember, one bracket was for just a 1D. The name of your 2D array, and then I want a new whatever type again, and then this is where you identify the number of rows you want and the number of columns I want. So here's my example. I have int bracket bracket rating equals new int 3 4. So what does that mean? That means I want 3 rows by 4 columns. So let's draw that out here. 3 rows. 1, 2, that's 3. 1, 2, 3, right? 4 columns. Now, my rows, though, are labeled 0, 1, 2, just like a normal array. Remember, our array's index started at 0. And then inside of each of these rows, I start at 0 for my columns. That's why we consider this fact of this two-dimensional array is just an array with arrays inside. So each row is an array, which helps us when we consider this in this regard of how to find the number of rows and the number of columns. Now you're saying, Marsh, why is that important? Well, if I'm trying to go through an entire 2D array, I'm going to need to know the length of this 2D array. So when we're finding the number of rows, we're going to go rating.length. Rating would be the name of our array that we're looking at. If I want the number of columns, we're going to go rating bracket 0 dot length. Now you're saying that's kind of odd, but let's talk about what this means. I have an array, right? And inside of that array, each spot or each index has an array inside. Okay? Let's actually draw that differently a little bit. There we go. Poof. Okay, so this is my array inside of that array. Now, to find the number of rows, we did rating.length. What that's doing is finding the length of the outside of the array that's holding the arrays. Okay, that's why I'm just doing dot length. If I want the number of columns, that's me saying I want how long is a row. So I'm saying how many boxes is in spot 0 of my array. Okay? It's kind of hard to keep in track, and once you're working with it, kind of works a little bit different. You start to kind of keep in mind, but just remember that column, the best way to remember it is to think, I have an array of arrays. So I need to find the length of the first array, and then each row, that will allow me to find the number of columns in my array. Now, how do I assign spots? How can I put things into a 2D array? Well, multiple ways. I can direct assign, so this is in my direct assignment abilities. We talked about that a couple slides back. So this would be me assigning row 1, column 2's spot 5. So if I was doing my array here, and I have, we don't know how many rows, let's go that many rows by this many columns, okay? Row 1, column 2, 0, 1, 2 would have a 5 placed in it. Okay, so that's what number that first ability would be for your direct assignment. Now, let's say you know everything and you can hard code information inside of it. Let's say we're doing a topological map or something along those lines that we know the values of the 2D array as we're starting it. You can direct assign like in this fashion. Notice how this is. This is for each row. Okay, so when I build this, it'll be 2, 5, 3, 6, 6, 7. Okay, so this 2D array would have 3 rows by 2 columns. Those columns would be labeled 0 and 1 for its indices, and the rows would be labeled 0, 1, and 2 for their indices. Okay, so in this case, 7 would be in row 2, column 1. Now, let's say we just want to do it iteration, so we want to just have it repeat a question. Let's say we're trying to get some user input in here. So theoretically, you can use loops. These loops look kind of cray-cray. Okay, I'm not going to lie. They look kind of scary when you look at them for the first time, but they're not terrible. So again, I made my 2D array here. Notice it's a 3 rows by 4 column array. And I have 2 separate for loops to take care of my abilities. Now you're saying, why 2? Well, ultimately, here's what I'm having to do. I'm having to go through every row, and then in each row, I have to go through each column. Okay? That's why I have this multiple things here going on. So this is going to count how many rows, because again, remember, we talked about this. The dot length tells you how many rows you got. So I'm going to go from row 0 to however many rows. And in each row, I'm going to go through the length of that row, which would be the number of columns. Now, this R and this C do not need to be there. However, I find it easier by labeling it R and C because that tells me what's my row and what's my column in this particular state. Let's take a look at some examples here. So below is a table showing the quantity of items sold at different restaurants in Skokie land over a week. Assume this data is stored in the array below. So they've made me a 2D array called products. Okay, they want me to print the number of salads sold by Burger King. So, well, we're going to print it, right? So that means we got a system.out.print line. Okay, now Burger King. Burger King is this spot, and they want the number of salads. Okay, so that would mean, well, I'm going to call the name of my array, right, products, and then I need to provide it some coordinates, if you want to call it that, to be able to find it. Well, rows and then columns, right? So salads would be in row 2. Burger King is column 1. So products 2, 1 would be the salads sold by Burger King. Let's try another one. So I'm going to change the number of fries sold by McDonald's to 9,001. Lots of fries being sold at McDonald's today. So I need to change the number of fries sold at McDonald's to be 9,001. So what I'm going to do is direct assignment. I'm going to say products, because that's the name of my array, the row that I want, which in this case was the fries row, that's row 1, columns 0, because that's the column for McDonald's, and I want to assign that 9,000, whoopsies, and 1. That would directly assign it for me. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause for a little bit. I'm going to let you think through this question here. See if you can accomplish the task. Write some code. See if you can get it. Now, I know if you didn't pause. Actually, I don't. But I will pause an excessively long time, so you have to think a little bit. Did you pause? You should probably pause. Check this, try to figure this one out. Awkward enough sound for you? Okay, let's try it. So, change the number of burgers sold by Burger King to be the same as the number of burgers sold by Wendy's. So I want the burgers of Burger King. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. I want burgers by Burger King to be assigned the same as burgers from Wendy's. Okay, so I want Burger King to be assigned Wendy's. So again, I got products, so this is direct assignment. So I want the burgers of Burger King. So that would be 0, 1 equals. They want the burgers sold by Wendy's. So I got to directly assign it. Now, you could put, what, 3,000, but that's not cool. We want to directly assign it. What if 3,000 gets changed? I want it to be changed automatically. I don't want to go back into my code. That would just be silly. So I could go 0, 2. Okay? That should directly change it for me. Now, let's try one that's a little bit more coding in this regard. So I need to find the average rating by the reviewer in row 2. So now we got to think through this. How can I add up all of the numbers? So what they want me to do is they want me to add 6, 9, 3, and 7. But, you know, we don't want to just add 6, 9, 3, and 7. That wouldn't be cool. We want it so that it does it automatically no matter how many movies this guy reviews, right? So notice I'm going through only row 2, but I am changing the column that I'm covering. So we probably only need one for loop, right? Because I'm not going through both rows and columns. So I'm going to have a for loop, and I am changing my columns. So I'm going to set that equal to C. And I want C to be less than. Now, I got to think through this. How did we find the length of columns again? I found the length of columns using the name of the array, which I think was called rating, and I want the length of row 2. Now, I could put 0 here because notice this is the same length. It does not matter what number you can put here. It doesn't honestly matter. Some people, if you have double arrays, they'll put an R there. It honestly does not matter. Okay, so I got C++. So what this is going to do is going through each separate column. Well, I probably need a variable, right, to hold the average. So I'm going to put an average here, double. This is me being bad programmer, forgot to do my job here. Double average equals 0. So I'm going to add to average each time. I'm going to add rating. Now, row, comma, row, then columns, right? So row is always row 2. But columns, I want that column to change each time. I want it to be 0, and then 1, and then 2. That's my counter, right? That's the C. So I'm going to put a C there, okay? That's all I want to do inside that loop, right? I just want to add all those together inside of that variable. Now, I need to divide. I need to find the average rating. So that means I'm going to take my average, and I'm going to divide average by how many numbers there are. Well, I can't say 4 because what if there's more numbers? I'm trying to keep this generalized, right? So what I can do is I can say I want to divide by rating 2 dot length. That would give me my average for the reviewer in row 2. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause again, and I want you to think through this problem. Try to write some code. See if you can see how to get this code to write. It should be very similar to the other example I just did. Just needs one for loop. I will pause for a little bit for you guys to think. Did you pause yet? If you didn't pause yet, that's not good. You should pause. Okay. Awkwardly waited for you guys to pause, so hopefully you did. Let's check it. So, they want me to do the third movie, so this movie. Well, third movie could be this one. Let's go row 3, or column 3, excuse me. Let's think through that way. So, I need again a for loop, right? But I'm not changing the rows this time. I'm changing the columns this time, correct? I'm going through, no, hold on. Let me think through this. I'm changing the rows, not the columns. My bad. So we need to change the rows. So I'm going to set int r equals 0. And since I'm changing rows, remember guys, this is a array with arrays inside. So that means I need to be less than rating dot length. Okay, because I want this is code word for number of rows. R plus plus. Okay, I probably need it again. I need to make a variable. There we go. I'm going to add for the average plus equals. Oh, random equal sign showed up out of nowhere. Okay, so now I need to move from here to here to here. So I'm going to say rating. The row is changing, right? That's the guy that's changing. So that's an R. Column is 3. So that's going to add this guy, and then add this guy, and then add that guy. So now I need to divide my average. So I need to find an average, right? So I got to divide by how many there are. So I'm going to divide by the name of the array dot length, because that's going to give me the number of rows that I was interested in. Okay? Hopefully this made sense. If not, I will be available during my virtual office hours, so you can ask a couple of questions and I can show you a little bit more examples. Also, after this, you should be going to go look to the video of doing the code along activity with me, which I will code an example of how to make a 2D array and also how to put stuff in it, how to take things, all of that fun jazz. So a little bit more practice with this as well. Until then, I hope to see you soon, and I'll see you later, Savers.